This is Kodak E100. It is a 100-speed color reversal film, and it gets you results that look like this. There's something special about looking directly at a positive. There's a quality about it that I can't quite put my finger on, but it gets lost when you try to print it or scan it. So the representation you're seeing through the video just doesn't do it justice. If you've never shot slides before, I'd highly recommend you shoot at least one roll and look at it on a light table or project it. Anyway, this E100 is a modern remake of an old film. Kodak briefly discontinued this only to bring it back a few years later. But we're not talking about this film today. We're talking about this old stuff. Shout out to Garrett for sending me a bunch of film, including several rolls of this Ektachrome 100 that expired in 1985. Generally speaking, expired slide film tends to degrade pretty badly, but it obviously depends on how it was stored over the years. I've seen slide film that expired several decades ago that came out looking pretty good when it was cold stored, but I've also seen slide film that wasn't as old that came out almost completely blank. If you're dealing with expired slide film, it could be a crapshoot, short of knowing how it was stored over the years. So 3 decades expired in unknown storage conditions? How bad could it be? Not as bad as I thought. For something that's over 30-something years expired, this is not bad. It's not great, but I've also seen worse. With a little color correction, it's still off, but it's not like completely unusable garbage. The colors are desaturated with a bump in contrast. Also, the highlights are just completely blown out. I know slide film has very little latitude, but even this seems over the top. The slides also have this magenta cast over everything, and this is something that's pretty typical of expired slide film. I don't know exactly why, but the magenta dyes tend to degrade slower than the cyan and the yellow dyes. I've seen expired slide film that is just magenta, so when I say this is pretty good, it's because there's at least some other color information here. It could be a lot worse. Now this is how the film turned out when it was developed normally. This is the benchmark I guess we're going to go off of, so I didn't really have high hopes moving forward, but I decided to cross-process in C41 and see what happens. Alright, just looking at the negatives, it doesn't look too bad. The base color looks a little overcooked, but the density of the negatives look fine, and the scans turned out pretty good. These were all shot at box speed, and some of these shots could have used a little more exposure, but overall, it turned out alright. The colors are slightly off, but definitely usable. And looking back at this first roll where the highlights are just completely blown out, the cross-process one retains a lot of that information. The colors look more natural cross-process, whereas when developed normally, these are all a little desaturated with a little more contrast, which kind of reminds me of bleach bypass. And seeing as how well it cross-processed in C41, I thought, well, maybe bleach bypass might be interesting. Yeah, it looks bad. Having denser negatives is common with bleach bypass, but even this is just a little too much. I don't know how much of it shows on camera, but you can see the negatives through this. Ignore any scanner artifacts you see, the scanner was trying its best. And this was a real pain to get anything out of it. I don't know where the bleach bypassing ends and the crappy scans begin, but overall it just doesn't look good. But I thought at least it can't get any worse than this. But obviously I'm going to trichrome it just to see if I can get better colors. So the negatives don't look too promising. First off, this was cross-processed in Rodinal, and it has this nice sickly green color to the base. There's a lot of underexposed frames here. That's probably due to the film being expired, so I probably should have overexposed it by a stop or two, but instead we're stuck with this. The red channel came out denser than the green or the blue channels, so everything has this red wash over everything. Somehow this turned out worse than the bleach bypass, which is a little surprising and kind of impressive. Partly user error, but mostly laziness, because I could have gone out and shot another roll, but I didn't, so this is what we get. Anyway, the takeaway from all of this is shoot fresh slide film if you can. If you find yourself with several rolls of expired slide film, shoot one normally and see how it turns out, and then go from there. Otherwise, shoot it at box speed and cross-process it in C41. That's probably your best route. And if you don't care and you want to waste money, then you could just do this.